How my camera looks here in a second. What we're going to do is we're going to do some techniques that we use to terminate and splice fiber optic, glass fiber optic cable. I'll show y'all plastic as we go along. The labs themselves are actually going to be using glass. And one of the first things we're going to do is to use a little device called a cleave. Now, what's important to prevent that reflection, Fresnel reflection, is that when we cut these things and we're going to bring them together, it's imperative that that front of that glass be perpendicular. If we break it or cut it with a pair of scissors or something, then it's not going to be perpendicular. So what we do to do this, and I'm not going to go over the stripping, the instructions there are pretty good, but we're going to use a device called a cleaver. And we have several of these, as soon as my camera loads up. It did load up. So this is a device called a cleaver. And what we do is we use this to cut fiber optic cable. This thing runs about 180 bucks, so be careful with it. And what it's got a diamond coated tip, if y'all can see it. And then it's got a way that we can actually measure our fiber right here. So let's look at the lab that's called cleaving, and y'all can give me the measurements that I need. So which lab is that? And of course I can't find my cable that I cut for that. I got one that I cut. This one right here will be okay. So what measurements do I need? So we got the 62.5 125 cable with a 250 micron tight buffer, and then a 3 millimeter loose tube out here, a loose buffer out here on the outside. So this is our cable that we'll be using. And it says I need a certain length. This length is not quite right, but what do we need to do here? What does it say? Okay, so we got several rollers around here. I'm going to use this plastic one, so it's pretty easy to use. Then I'm going to come back and measure off how long? 5 inches. I already give them all in millimeters. So I got a little we got these black markers that we'll use. So let's come up here and get a black marker and mark it so I don't have to deal with it. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to strip this in lengths. Since it's so long, we'll strip it in lengths. And then we got you'll have a scrap sandwich bag that will keep our scraps in. At the end of the class, we can just throw it away. So we'll come up here, and how do we strip it? We just come and do what? Cut it. Then we twist it, pull it off. We'll come up here and cut it. And then we'll twist it and pull it off. And then we'll come up. Huh? Oh. Sorry. So I'll keep going. We'll cut it. I can see it just like. Strip it off. And cut it. Twist it, pull it off, right? And then here's my final mark. Cut it, twist it, pull it off. And what does it say we're going to do next? Yeah, this stuff, we're going to come up here, and of course we're going to twist it so we can bundle it together. And then we're going to get some, these are electrician scissors. These work real well too. You can buy these. Y'all be using Kevlar scissors. These are just the ones that I picked up. And we'll cut it as flush with the jacket as we possibly can. And then we'll come in here and put this in our scrap bag. Okay, what do I need to do next? Okay, so I got my ruler off. I should do all these in millimeters, by the way. I don't know why I didn't do that. I'm gonna come up here and lay it down. I'm gonna come up here with my black marker, mark off 1.5 inches, and then we're gonna remove the type buffer. So we'll do that similar to we did the first one. We'll do that in lengths. So this will be the second one that we use to remove the type buffer. Do it about in 1/4 inch length. Make sure it goes into the groove. Of course, the more we're doing, the more protection that we're taking off our fiber. And if you miss the groove on these things, and you get it up here, it's going to cut the fiber, right? So make sure it does what? Make sure it falls into the groove, and you come up and pull it. Okay. So what do we do next? Then we're going to remove the buffer coating, right? Okay. So we're going to come into the last groove. Be real careful here. We're going to drop it down and then slightly angle it and then pull it, and you can see the buffer coating coming off. And sometimes you have to clean out your thing. We do have compressed air or canned air, by the way. Okay. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to get a lint-free outlet rod. And then we're going to come up here and coat it with at least 91% isopropyl alcohol. And you need to be careful and watch out for your glass. And then we're going to kind of put it in a V. And turn this around this way. And then we're going to take our glass and just clean off the rest of that buffer, right? And then we don't need to touch the glass anymore. Okay, what are we going to do next? We're going to take our Fitel splice. This is a pretty popular, cleave. Fitel, and why is it called a Fitel? Because that's what's on there. You know, what are we going to do? We're going to press down on this back button. It raises this thing here, which is going to hold the glass in place. We're going to slide it up this groove. Lay it on there. Be real careful. Going to go up to what? 10 millimeters. Can y'all see the 10 millimeter mark? And I'm going to let it down. So I'm doing the outside jacket at 10 millimeters. And then I'm going to come up and do what? I'm going to pick it up. Be careful. Make sure this is down the groove. I'm going to come up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this and bring it down and touch the glass. And then I'm going to take this and bend it back, and it breaks exactly where I cleaved it. And it should be exactly 10 millimeters. And that's cleaving. Now what we cleave with is we don't cleave when we do our terminals, but we cleave when we do our splices. When we splice, that end's got to be what? It's got to be flush. This is not going to be long enough, I don't think, to fit into my little checker. But I'll show y'all that thing too. So see how to do that? Okay. So this is called a cleave. Some people call them cleavers. And this guy right here we use to just put a little dent. You don't want to cut it with the cleave. Y'all understand that? You just want to bring it down and do what? And touch it. And then you bend that tail down, and it will do what? It will break right at the cleave. Are we okay? Are we okay? So that'll get us ready later on when we do our mechanical splices. And by the way, you have to follow these templates because everything's got to fit right. So the glass has got to go down into the ferrule or the thing that's actually mounting. And then when we come in and crimp or do something or tighten a compression, we're going to tighten it down not on the glass, but on this jacket, right? You understand? So if you don't strip these things to the exact right length or real close, then either your glass is not going to go all the way in where it's supposed to be, or your jacket is going to bottom out or not let your glass go in, or your jacket is not going to go on the part that we actually crimp down to. You understand? Everybody okay? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a connector. So let's look at the next one. So what's the next lab? Termination. This is a little more complicated. And what I found out, and I might put this on the lab procedure, we're dealing with extremely short sections, so we're going to have a 3-foot section of fiber cable. And what's going to happen is when you're doing these precise strips, if you pull on it any, what's it going to do? It's going to slide within this short length. We're not going to, when you're stripping the fiber optic, I'm going to give you only a little inch, maybe 5 inches, just so you can learn how to just strip it, right? You understand? And what you're going to do on that lab, which is lab 9, I think, is you're going to tie the cable in a knot to prevent it from doing what? Moving through the little short length of cable. That's the last time you're going to do that. So now we're dealing with fairly short lengths. So what I've done on my other length, so we're going to put 2 connectors on this, and we're going to make a fiber optic cable. We're going to terminate it with 2 connectors. And then when we get our connectors done, we're going to measure the loss. And y'all have already done that lab, right? Or some of y'all are still working on that. So what I did on this side is, and I'm going to probably put this on the procedure, is I went ahead and stripped it to the right length, and I folded the Kevlar back, and I did what? And I taped it. So that means the Kevlar can't move. And then I got a piece of masking tape and taped the real on the cable, so now the actual conductor can't move. And that way you shouldn't have much problems when you strip these. What I've done to make this easier to strip is I basically set up me a little stripping template on a piece of paper. And that way I have something instead of bringing my ruler up. So normally when you buy connectors or you buy a terminating kit, it'll come with what we call a stripping template. And that's what you'll use in the lab where you strip, is you'll strip according to a template. So what I've done is I've made my only stripping template. So what's our length? So this is the same cable. This is going to be a 3-foot section because this is the cable we're going to terminate on both sides. We're going to put an ST connector on both sides. And then we're going to use our meters to measure the loss of the cable. And then we're going to cut the cable in the center and we're going to splice this. We're going to splice it first with a mechanical splice. And then we're going to cut that out or take it off. We're using a semi-permanent splice, an ultra splice that I showed y'all the other class. So we can take that off and clean it up. And then after that, we'll fusion splice it. Now what we'll do on the fusion splice, though, since we're kind of running out of time, is we'll do that as a class. And I'll get the fusion splicer out and I'll do this cable right here. So first thing I'm going to do is once I cut the tip of my cable, what does it say the first thing we need to do? We need to slide the boot on. So this is our cable. This is our connector right here. This is an ST connector. It uses a ceramic ferrule. And the ferrule is what's actually a lining, right? Understand? And of course, the ST connector is a bayonet connector. It's got a key on here, so it is a wiggle-proof connector. So we don't have to worry about wiggling it. But it's not a pull-proof connector. Pull-proof means if I come over and grab the cable, if it's a pull-proof connector, it won't pull or separate within the actual connection itself between the transmitter and receiver. ST connectors are not pull-proof because the latching mechanism they use has a spring in there that holds it down, and when you pull on it, that spring is going to happen, and what's going to happen is the ferrule is going to pull out of it. But we shouldn't have any problem with that unless we trip over the cable or we don't pull our cables long enough. We don't need enough loops. We got to have enough loop for it. Recommended minimum is a minimum of 2 repairs. But you'll see these guys, they'll usually leave a pretty good deal. I know y'all can see the loop up there on the network cables. So they left plenty of room up there because those little old tabs, I know if y'all use the old phones that use the RJ11 connectors, those little old plastic tabs break over all the time, don't they? And what do you usually have to do? You usually have to go out and buy your new cord. Well, we can't do that because these cords run through the wall. So what we need to do is if that tab breaks off is do what? Cut off that connector and terminate it again. And if I don't terminate it right, then I drop my connector on the floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and strip these to the lengths. So what does it say I need to do? It says the outside tube or the outside jacket, what do I need to do? I'm going to say 38 millimeters. Okay. So what I've got here, if y'all can see it, is I've got these marks on the table. I'm using just a regular piece of paper with a straight line on it. That way I can line it up. And I've got 30 millimeters right here. I got 10 millimeters right there, and I got 8 millimeters. Y'all say 8 or say 9? Change that to 8. Okay, so change the 9 to an 8. I meant to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this over here. Of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to mark off for 38. And then I'm going to come in here and take my stripper and take off that. Made my cut. Do what? Twist it, pull it off. What's the next thing we're going to do? Now, the problem I had that I realized when I wrote this up is that when I use this felt tip pen and try to mark the Kevlar, it bleeds into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and lay it back out. And so there's 38, right? Okay. Then I'm going to come out here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an 8 millimeter mark on my orange wire. And that way I'm going to use that to cut my Kevlar, because what I found out is with this pen, when we try to mark the Kevlar with that pen, it bleeds all into the Kevlar, and it makes it hard to see your mark. But now I've got a reference mark on my cable, and I can come up here and use my Kevlar scissors to cut it to that length. Or these are electrician scissors. It might take you a couple of times to get this. Ooh, that's beautiful. Okay, so I cut that to that length. Okay, now what am I going to do? Let's say next. Now we're going to mark it to 10 millimeters, right? This will be right here. And then I'm going to strip this off. Strip off my my type buffer or my type 2. And we're going to do this in lengths. By the way, we have these black mats that y'all need to use when you're doing this, because when you're dealing with fiber, some of the components are real hard to see. Okay, so I took off the type buffer. What's the next thing I need to do? I need to strip off my coating, right? Put my safety glasses on since I'm blowing all this stuff around. Where's my safety glasses? I had them on my head, guys. I'm sorry. And notice I put it at a slight angle, and I pull it, right? And it strips off the coating. Clean this off with some canned air. Come up here and do the same thing twice. Then I'm going to do what next? Take my lint-free cloth, come over and lay it down, and clean this off. Okay, you see all the buffer coating's gone if you can see that. Okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, I left some of my Kevlar out here. I might have to get the Kevlar scissors. What's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to fan my my Kevlar around. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to dry fit this thing to make sure everything's the right length. Because we're going to glue this sucker in there. If it's not the right length now, we can't, once we get it glued in there, there's nothing we can do. These guys run about $5, $6 a piece. I need to go look. So they're not cheap. So I don't want to just, slap it in there and glue it in there without it being right. Need to be real careful. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm taking this hand and I'm resting into that hand. So that way, if my hands move, they're going to do what? They're going to move together. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to dry fit this. And notice what happens. The Kevlar should fan back across this and go into the tube. Because when we crimp it, okay, so this looks beautiful. So this has got to come out the end. So that 38 millimeters is not critical because we're going to cut most of this off. Can y'all see it? So it dry fits what? Dry fits nice. Kevlar, looks like I cut the Kevlar just a hair too long, but that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to push it. No, I didn't. We're going to push it in until it butts into the jacket. Okay, so what are we going to do next? So dry fit is perfect. If you got any coating left on there, it will not fit down that barrel tube. So don't force it, because if you force it, what's going to happen? It's going to break. You don't understand that. Okay, so now we got to really be careful. So I took my connector back off, and what's the next thing we're going to do? Huh? Put the what on? Put stuff. What I've done is I've taken mine up here to the front, so I'll lay it down. It's going to probably get broke. Hopefully I don't hit it with my. So what we got is we got we're going to use what we call the, what do they call it? Anaerobic epoxy. We have several methods we can do, and this is in the slide. We can use hot melt. We can use epoxy heat that we heat up. So we got an oven, and we used to use this thing, and so we got epoxy that comes in these little packs. It's real neat. If I open up one and show y'all, what you do is you take the epoxy and you take out that center tube, and then you put it on the edge of the desk and move it back and forth. And what it'll do is it mix the epoxy with the hardener if I've ever dealt with epoxy before. Then what you do is you take one of these syringes with a special tip on it, and you fill this up with, well, you don't fill it up, you put enough in here, and then what you do is you take your connector, where's my connector at? Over here. And then we would jam it down, and we would squirt that epoxy in there until we see a little bead come out on the end of the ferrule. And then once we do that, as soon as we do that, we crimp the back shell, crimp it in so it don't wobble, it don't move. And then what we do is we can leave it overnight, and the epoxy will set overnight, or we put it in a little. I'm gonna pass this around. I'm gonna pass two around so y'all can do it. So we put it inside one of these little tubes like this. What would happen is the students would clean off that epoxy and get on the outside of the barrel. And then they would stick it down inside this little thing that fits down inside the oven. And then it would take the epoxy onto the barrel, and now we screw up this. So these, if you're going to do a lot of outside connections and something that needs extremely good mechanical strength, then you would use the epoxy method. If you're going to do inside cables, which is what we're using, odds are you're going to use the adhesive. So the adhesive is fine. So if you get this a little bit of this on the outside of the barrel, it's not going to screw up our oven. So you see the little clip on there that holds the cable, and then you put it down inside the oven, and it will cure about 30. Takes about 30 minutes to cure in the oven. But we're not going to use epoxy. The next thing we have is the next best thing is using the adhesive. But normally we only use this adhesive for inside cables. And ours is going to be basically inside cable. Then you have what we call a hot melt, which is put out by Corning, I think, which has the epoxy already in it. And what you do is you just stick the thing through there, and then you do and then you put it in the oven and let it cure. Another way we got is what we got the mechanical type. This is these give you the most dB loss, but basically you just put it in there and crimp it down, and we'll see so we don't have any of those. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take, this is the hardener. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our cable and we're going to dip it into the hardener. Be real careful that you don't hit. Okay. And then we're going to let this cure. And then we're going to take the syringe, we're going to insert it down into the back shell, right, until it bottoms out, and then we're going to squirt the adhesive in there until we see the little bubble coming out the top. That's it? See the balloon? I'm sorry. Then what I'm going to do, take this out. By the way, we keep this in a little thing because this is if this is open and you knock it over, you're going to spill it all over the place. Okay. So what we got is we got our epoxy in here, we got our hardener on our cable, and then what we're fixing to do is you cannot pause while you're inserting this thing. So you got to insert it in one smooth motion. What you're going to do when you put it in there is you're going to rotate the connector. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that epoxy spreads around the outside of the cable, right? All this makes sense? So I'm going to get ready. Okay. Same method we used to dry fit it. I'm going to come over here and do what? Push it down, rotate it while I'm pushing it in. Okay. And then what are we going to do now? Yes, butted it all the way. Pretty much, well, if you cut your Kevlar right, it's butted all the way. It'll stop when it hits that outside, when it hits that loose tube on the outside. And then what are we going to do next? We're going to crimp it. This is what our crimp tool looks like. Set up for several things. We can use these things for all kind of crimps. And which one does it say I need to use? Huh? What? Okay, so here's 0.137 on the crimp tool. I'm going to come in here and put this in, and then I'm going to go ahead and crimp it down. Okay. And what it did is that's why we're pushing the Kevlar in there, so it crimped it down on the Kevlar. Okay? Let's just set up about 3 minutes. That should be all it needs for that epoxy. And then what am I going to do next? Next is when it becomes interesting. So I'm not going to slide the boot down. You can go ahead and slide the boot down if you want to. So, but first, make sure the first thing you do is do what? Put the boot on there. Now, of course, here we're kind of lucky, but we got the other end of the cable. But if you're putting together one of these big old long cables right here, and this connector is in the bed on here, and the other one's up there in A building, and you don't put the boot on there, and you put your connector on there, then what are you going to have to do? You're going to take it off because this boot is part of the string. Okay, is everybody okay? So what we're going to do next is we're going to figure out how to cut this extra length out here. And that's why this length is not extremely important out here. All you got to do is have enough that sticks out so you can grab it with your fingers when we scribe it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a device called a scribe. You're not going to cut it with it, you're going to scribe it. It's kind of like anybody that's ever cut glass. You've got a glass cutter, That's what you're doing. You're scribing the glass. And once you get the glass scribed, it should break extremely easy, right? When you break this, you don't want to bend it now. You want to pull it straight. So we're going to come up here and get our scribe. Huh. I don't guess that is. Our scribe. There's a scribe. And the tip on that other one is gone. It looks like somebody didn't cover it back up with this thing right here. So this stays on top of the scribe. See the scribe? And then what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we want to scribe it right at the epoxy bead that comes off. We'll come up here and describe it. And then I should be able to come over here and grab it and pull it. It should break where it's scribed. Now we're not through yet. What we're going to do now is we're going to sand this glass down. And we're going to go through several grits of sandpaper. What does it say to use first? Find our grits of sandpaper. So I've got a 3 micron. This is a 0.5 micron. What size do I need first? This is the 3 micron. This is a 0.5. This is a 12 micron. Which one do I need to use first? I got the procedure there. This is 0.5. This is 3. This is 12. what we do when we air polish, I'm going to use 12. Then we'll let y'all look at this. What we do when we air polish is we take our film, and then we're going to take this right here, and then we're going to lightly rub it around in this thing right here. Probably around 8 loops. Huh? I'm sorry. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the glass close to the wad, to the top of the ferrule. Okay. Then what we're going to do next is we're going to use what we're going to use what we call a polishing puck. And I'm going to probably have to clean off my desk a little bit. And these are polishing pucks. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit of distilled water. So we got some distilled water inside the termination kit. And we're going to get a polishing pad. It's in here. We're going to get a little bit of distilled water. And then, using the right grit, I'll go ahead and use this one, is we're just going to come in here and do what? Put a drop of water in the center of the pad, right? And then we're going to come over here and take our polishing puck, slide this in here, and then we're going to come up here and do this in figure eights. And we're going to do it 8 times. And then we're going to do what? Then we'll go down to the next side grit, the next size grit, until we get to the last grit. Now when we get to the last grit, what we're going to start doing is we're going to start looking at this with what we call a fiber scope. And basically, the fiber scope, where we can put these different, all these connectors basically have a ferrule, and the ferrule is the same size. So you notice on these, a lot of these test equipment, all we have is just a tube up here that we can stick the ferrule in. Of course, before I look at it, what should I do? Should clean it off with alcohol, right? Then I'll come up here and put it in here, and then I'll turn this on and focus it. Now be careful when you focus it, because what's going to happen is what happens. We done broke one of these things where the student went down too far and hit the fiber, and then he kept going down. So he stripped out the little gears that turned the I never could see it yet. Okay, it's not quite ready yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to move this around. I still got to open the button. You see there's a little glaze over the tip. So what we're going to do is we're going to file this down, and what we're looking for is we're looking for what? This guy here won't let me draw that yet. Can't put this on the camera. But what we're looking for is we're looking for the circle, and then we're not looking for any cracks in here, right? You got cracks, that means we didn't describe it correctly. But we're not going to start checking this until when? The last grit. And you can barely see not the core, you can barely see the conductor. What you're looking at are the core. You can see the core, and then the white around is the cladding. So you literally can see components of the actual conductor itself. So this outside is the cladding, and this right here is actually the hole. We put a light source on it, and we can actually see light coming through. So these things are not easy to put on there, and they got to be done right, because if we crack it or anything, then we're going to get that Fresnel reflection, right? You understand? So this is going to be perpendicular. So that's why we use the polishing pump to do what? To make that perpendicular. So we're not trying to start off with it perfectly even, but we're going to cut it real close with our scribe, pull it straight back, and then we're going to start sanding, right? Okay. And you can see why one of the techniques is very, very expensive. What AT&T does, they have a company that terminates for them. And they have a lot of machines to do this. And this is an SC connector, by the way. And you can see the ferrule on it is exactly the same as this one. And what they'll do is they'll get these pigtails. And this is so that's what it is. This is a pigtail. And they do a lot of this. So they have these professionally put on there and checked. And then what do? They splice this on using a fusion splicer. It's a lot easier to fusion splice them than it is to. Now, fusion splicers cost a lot of money, and these guys cost a lot of money. But if you're paying a guy, $20, $30, $40 an hour, then and you're doing a lot of these, and odds are they can afford to do this, right? Because it's going to be done right the first time. It's already been checked, and then they can use their $40,000, $50,000 fusion splicer to do what? But remember, AT&T's doing thousands of these things. I mean, thousands of them. So they can afford that technique. You don't do that many, so you won't do that many. So odds are this is the method you'll use to terminate. Everybody okay? Any problems? And we got several grits. I'll have to figure out the grits here. We'll use the smallest. We'll end up with the smallest grit that we have. And I don't know what I think it's 0.3 microns is the smallest grit I have. And that's where we'll end up at. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this on two sides, two connectors. But hopefully you'll get it right the first time. These guys cost a lot of money. So we'll give you 3 shots. You can't do it in 3 shots. So if you mess up one and you can't bank it, you can't give your extra connector to somebody else. So 3 shots. So if you don't do one of them, you can cut it off and redo it, right? You understand? But after that, then we'll just get the grade that you get. Everybody understand that? And then once we get this, we're gonna take this cable and we're gonna measure the dB loss. We're gonna see it's within the limit. We don't know the loss of the cable, but it's a short cable, so we can assume it doesn't have hardly any. ST connectors, I think the maximum loss, we'll look that up, is like 0.3 dB per pair. So that's what we're looking at. That's maximum. So what we would like you to see is when you put that thing on that dB meter, for it to come up to be less than what? 0.3. I'm pretty sure. I'll check on that. It's been a while since I've done this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to splice this cable. We're going to do what? We're going to cut it in the center, and then we're going to put a mechanical splice on that. We're going to trim that according to the templates, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put a semi-permanent mechanical splice using one of the ultra splices, which I'll let y'all get started on this, and then we'll come back and look at splicing, and then we'll do a fusion splicing, but we'll do that as a class. We're okay? So we're going to use this same cable, and we're going to use it for 3 labs. And then once I get it graded, if you want it, you can have it. we okay? All right. Let's go to lab. Go take a break. Now let's go to lab. I'm gonna put my pigtails up.